you were there. And while we were managing multiple scenes, it was my observation that despite the incredible loss, knowing that the fact that the officers who were out there were clearly hurting, they performed their duties remarkably. Everyone did. Our patrol officers, Investigations Bureau, crime scene, tactical, no one missed a step. And I was extremely impressed with their performance out there. It was really, truly remarkable. And I stand proud of this organization, and I want to acknowledge all those officers that continue to do their work despite this tragedy. And while I won't be identifying these names or these officers individually by name, I want to acknowledge a New Mexico State Police officer who found Justin on the side of the road, along with Quay County deputy who showed up to assist and render aid to Justin. I can simply not imagine what that experience must have been like for them, but I can tell you that I'm extremely thankful that they were there, because if it was not for them, Justin would have died out there alone, and as it were, he had his fellow brothers of law enforcement there to help him. And so I would extend the same appreciation to the EMTs, the nurses, all the medical staff and doctors who leaned in to help. I know that they gave their very best. We were at the hospital there in Tucumcari, and we could see the pain on all of them as well. And we are extremely grateful for all of their efforts in trying to save Justin's life. I want to thank all of our law enforcement partners who immediately reached out to offer resources and assistance as we were traveling out to location. The phone was just nonstop with support. And I can't list them all. I mean, the list is very long of people who offered their assistance. I'm certain there will be agencies that'll come to light that were instrumental in the success of this that I am not even aware of yet. But I can tell you that I'm extremely grateful. I'll just mention some. We had all municipal chiefs and county sheriffs reaching out, particularly, of course, Quay County. The jurisdiction where it occurred was very instrumental. Texas DPS, we were collaborating with law enforcement in South Carolina. We had the FBI. Raul Bahanda reached out immediately and offered all of his assistance. ATF, HSI, U.S. Marshals, all the federal acronyms were simply out there. U.S. Attorney Alex Ubayas has been very instrumental in helping us through this. Second Judicial District, Sam Bregman reached out, offered all of his resources and assistance as well, and we were very, very grateful. As I mentioned, I'm certain there are many more who have helped that I've yet to even realize, and I know that we'll continue to receive a tremendous amount of help still moving forward as this investigation is ongoing. I'll just sum up. When something like this happens, we often look for immediate answers, and very often we look to either mental health or behavioral health issues. And while I'm certain that inflicts many in our society, we can just turn to Las Cruces as an example where that certainly applies. I'm here to tell you that there are some people in our society that are just violent. They're calculated, deliberate in their actions, and they stop at absolutely nothing to prey on others. And that's exactly what we experienced within the New Mexico State Police yesterday. Jeremy Smith is certainly that, just a violent person with a long criminal history that obviously had no regard for anyone that he comes into contact with. We have victims in South Carolina, and of course we have a victim very here in our own state, the New Mexico State Police. So the message to him is very clear, is that we're coming for you. We will also be deliberate and calculated in our actions. New Mexico State Police and all of our partners will be relentless in our pursuit to bring him into custody and to make sure that he stands to question for this cowardice act, which is exactly what it was. DPS will spare no expense to make sure that he's brought to justice for what he has done. Excuse me. To anyone who has information, we ask them to come forward and do the right thing. Now's the time to do that. Because here on forth, for anyone who is found aiding or harboring Jeremy Smith, we will also charge them and prosecute them to the fullest extent. And you can be sure of that. With that, that concludes my remarks. I'll turn it over to New Mexico State Police Chief Troy Weisler.
Thank you, Captain Secretary Bowie. I want to thank you all for being here this morning. I also want to thank my fellow New Mexicans for all of the support that you provided both me and my agency in this past day and a half. And just to reiterate what the Cabinet Secretary said, a huge thank you to all our law enforcement partners who've been working tirelessly on this investigation right alongside us, some of which you see up here this morning. Now, this press conference is going to give a more detailed description of what happened yesterday, how the investigation has unfolded, and where we are right now. Yesterday around 5 a.m., New Mexico State Police Officer Justin Hare was dispatched to Interstate 40 near milepost 318 to assist a motorist in a white BMW who had a flat tire and had been attempting to wave down other motorists. When Officer Hare arrived, he parked behind the disabled vehicle. The suspect, who's been identified as Jeremy Alexander Smith, 33, of Marion, South Carolina, exited his vehicle and approached Officer Hare's passenger side window. A short conversation ensued about repairing his tire and possibly getting a ride back to town, when without warning, the suspect pulled out a firearm and shot Officer Hare. Smith then walked to the driver's side and shot Officer Hare again. Smith pushed Officer Hare into the passenger seat and drove away in Officer Hare's patrol unit, with Officer Hare still inside. After calls from dispatch to Officer Hare were not answered, additional state police officer was dispatched to assist and find out what was going on, what had happened. While the assisting officer was responding to the area, Officer Hare's duress signal began to go off. The duress signal is an emergency beacon, either on the officer's handheld radio or inside the unit. There's one on the console radio and on the computer. It can be activated and it sends an emergency signal to dispatch. As the assisting officer continued to the scene, he saw Officer Hare's patrol unit driving at a high rate of speed along the frontage road, which runs alongside Interstate 40 on the north side. The officer took the next exit to get on the frontage road and attempted to catch up to Officer Hare's unit because there was still no response on the radio. When the officer caught up to the patrol unit, it had crashed off the side of the road around milepost 304. The assisting officer approached Officer Hare's patrol unit only to find that it was empty. Smith, or as we would find out, Smith had fled on foot into the surrounding area. At that time, there was no sign of Officer Hare. A search of the area began, and Officer Hare was later located on the frontage road of Interstate 40 near milepost 312. He was transported by ambulance to Dan Trigg Hospital in Tucumcari, where he passed away. An intensive manhunt was conducted yesterday and continues in the area that Officer Hare's unit was abandoned. We tracked what we believed to be Smith's trail for quite some time, but eventually lost it when it returned back to the interstate. Now, through the course of our investigation, we've learned that the BMW that Smith was in belonged to a missing female out of South Carolina who was found dead late yesterday by authorities there. Phoenicia Machado IV was a paramedic in Marion County, South Carolina. We want to extend our heartfelt condolences to that community for their loss of a fellow first responder. After pursuing several leads throughout the day related to the South Carolina incident, we were able to identify Jeremy Smith as a potential suspect. We were then able to positively identify him as the man in Officer Hare's dash camera through multiple methods and means. We've also learned that Smith has ties to the Albuquerque area and has a very extensive criminal history. And we are currently conducting an intensive search for him. Officer Hare died serving his state and his community. On a cold, dark, and windy morning, he offered help to a person he thought was in need. That person killed him in cold blood. Y'all might have seen a statement I released last night. And what I said in that was absolutely true. The last words Officer Hare uttered on this earth was to offer help to a man who was about to kill him. Jeremy Smith, we are coming for you. I implore you to turn yourself in and surrender peacefully. There's been enough death and despair. But if he does not, I guarantee you this: we will find him. There is nowhere he can run. There's nowhere he can find, or where he can hide, where we will not find him. If anyone has had contact with him, please do the right thing and come forward now with your information. Going forward, though, if anyone knowingly assists him, they should expect to pay the price as well and be prosecuted with every charge possible. I have been chief of the New Mexico State Police for 8.5 months. This will be the 3rd officer New Mexico has buried in that time. In less than 9 months, we've lost Officer Ferguson, Officer Hernandez, and now Officer Hare, all violently murdered in cold blood. State Police went 30 years without an officer shot and killed. Now we've had 2 in just over 3 years. This has got to stop. We ask that anyone with information about Jeremy Smith contact us at 505-425-6771. Smith should not be approached and is considered armed and dangerous. We will now take a few questions. Let's go left to right. We'll start.
Is there any reason to believe that he may still be in New Mexico just with his ties to this area?
That's a definite possibility. We're not going to get too much into that right now just because of the ongoing nature of the investigation, but we are following up on every lead, both here and elsewhere.
Can you talk about Officer Hare's career, and then also how the New Mexico State family is going to come in and support his family?
Yeah, absolutely. So Officer Hare, he grew up in Logan and Moriarty. He just hit 5 years with state police in December. He was stationed back there. He actually moved back in and lives in the house that he grew up in. He's a member and a pillar of that community. I spent several hours with his girlfriend yesterday, and just at the hospital. What you realize being there, it's a small, tight-knit community that he had lots of ties to. So, you're at the hospital. These people all knew Justin. The people working on him, trying to save his life, people dealing with the family, he was a friend of theirs. His wife told me a story. Their next door neighbor, when our officers went to do notification yesterday, her next door neighbor obviously knew something was up, and her next door neighbor teaches their 2 young daughters in preschool. She taught Justin in preschool. So, this obviously has a huge impact on that community. State Police, we have been with the family since this happened. We will continue to be with the family and support them in every way, both, of course, now through the funeral and however they choose to honor Justin. And we will be here to support the family, forever. So, thank you.
You said his trail led back to the interstate. Do police think that he hitched a ride, and do police know what direction he was traveling if he did hitch a ride?
We do think it's definitely possible that he did get a ride at that point. but we're investigating all leads right now as to where he might have been.
Regarding the victim that was found last night in South Carolina, have you guys had any communication with the law enforcement there about the suspect?
Yeah, we've been in regular communication with law enforcement in South Carolina throughout the day yesterday, last night, and we'll continue to be in communication as we both work our different investigations in determining what exact relation there might be between the two.
So the connection isn't confirmed yet, or it's confirmed?
It's an ongoing investigation, so.
So do police believe that Hare himself pushed the distress signal button in the unit? Does it have to be pushed by a person, or can it be triggered in another way?
So we cannot say for certain. I believe that there's a couple of different duress signals. There's one on his radio, there's one on the console in the car, and there's one on the computer. It appears the one that did get activated was the one that was on his radio, but we can't say if he pushed it or if in the moving of him around in the vehicle, if it got accidentally pushed. Yes, ma'am.
And just to clarify, I know you touched on it a little bit, but is it, we heard that some Texas law enforcement agencies were alerted yesterday that the suspect might have jumped on a freight train in that area to get away. Can you deny or?
Like I said, we're investigating all possible leads at this time.
Are you able to go into any of Smith's criminal history and some of the things that he was involved in before?
Just to say that he has a very extensive criminal history, the majority of which is in South Carolina. Goes back for at least a decade. A lot of property crime on there, but there also is some past violent crimes.
Can you elaborate at all on his connections to New Mexico? Was he from here? His family?
Yeah, well, I'm not going to get into that right now. Thank you.
You said it's in Albuquerque where he has ties to Albuquerque.
We know, yes, we know that there are ties, and he has spent time in Albuquerque in the past.
Can you elaborate on any of his criminal history?
I don't have it in front of me, but I'm sure that we can put out some additional info, detail on some of that. Anything else? Good. All right. Thank y'all for coming.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for being here, sir.
Again, thank you all for coming. We'll be putting out a more detailed press release here pretty soon that'll have more information. And then, of course, just reach out to us, and we'll get you that criminal history and the things like that that you need.
Hold on, Chief.
Okay.
Good job. Okay, thanks.
Okay, I thought I heard
No
that.
stuff, man. Pretty good.
Sorry, Jared.
Oh, sure. Got a little tongue-tied there a little bit.
No, it was excellent. I think that,
Oh, thanks. Appreciate it.